more that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place. All right, welcome to our Tuesday Live. This is Andy Prisco with Jumpstart Mastery, where we have a exciting topic. Brenda from B Branding, I wonder if you're deliberately doing this to me. The topics are becoming more and more complex, and when I go to my briefing and open up the topic of the day that I'm going to talk about, I wonder if you're toying with me. We're going to talk about what happens when siblings, grow up in the same family, but are entirely different people, and the strain that can put on relationship, and the beauty that can also be in that too. And of course, everything that we talk about at Jumpstart Mastery is in the crisis de-escalation, peacemaking context, but the kind of conditioning that those circumstances can bring on a human being. We're going to try to tackle that topic together. So thanks for joining us. We're streaming live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Same family, different paths. The context that I have with this, interestingly, is really anchored solidly in being a dad. However, I have a sister, and we are approximately 14 years apart. So I can't say that I have a large number of years together with my sister in the same house. There were a few, but there was such an age disparity that she really grew up in a different house than I did because there were so many years between us. Now, my daughters, Hannah and Kate, who I raised, have 4 years apart between them. And, as I was leaning into the formative years of my work in mental health and crisis response during their development, I was curious about a lot of things. One of the things that motivated me to look into good parenting was because I did not want my hangups or vulnerabilities to burden them in their own development. I wanted to try to spare my children some of the suffering that I went through. So I became very interested in parenting styles and interventions and approaches to problems that yielded strong independent thinking, let's say, and while regulating my responsibilities as a parent to see to their development and create safety and create an environment at home in which they can really thrive as growing people and individuate and go out into the world fully capable. The differences between Hannah and Kate are extraordinary. There are some things that are very similar, but I'll share with you some things I came to learn about birth order and some things that seem consistent and some things that I observed along the way. And I'm going to wind up talking about some things that I spoke about in a live I did, I think 2 weeks ago, about siblings that were in conflict. So most firstborn children, the literature seems to say, can be most prone to anxious attachment style or anxiety in general, largely because the first children are the ones where the parents are the most careful. So the manner in which they engage the youth can be very concerned about well-being, very concerned about doing things right, very concerned about wanting to ward off harm, engaging in perhaps some overprotectiveness. And there's no doubt that that's what happened with our first daughter, Hannah. And she began to present as she grew up into a walking, talking youngster. She began to grow up engaging the world with sensitivities that we gave her as a result of our parenting style. 4 years later, Kate came along. Kate, from lessons learned, was parented to some extent differently in that the things we were previously anxious about as brand new parents were not showing up in our parenting of Kate. So as she begins to develop as a walking, talking youngster, engaging the world, the sensitivities that Hannah had were not the same sensitivities that Kate had. Now, where would the strain come? The strain might come from disalignment between these two about what is important. What's important about engaging the world? What's important about safety? What's important about how to treat people? Kate is far more outspoken, probably sometimes to her own detriment, than Hannah, who is far more calculated and thoughtful in her communication. There's no doubt that those differences in them were born in those formative interactions between parents and youngsters about how they engage the world. And watching that evolve over time also provided, through the strain, opportunities to appreciate the other. I got to witness that in real time on so many occasions between Hannah and Kate, who are so entirely different in many ways. Kate is like, if I had to liken her to a character in Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire, the great epic novel about the Spartans at Thermopylae, Kate is like Antony, a lion-like courage that when she flips that switch on, which you can see on the soccer field, consideration for damage or expense to self in the service of a large team goal goes out the window. And she does not feel apprehension or reticence. Tony Blauer would call her a unicorn that way. When she decides to turn that switch on, there's nothing she can't accomplish. Hannah is more, and I don't have that. I don't know where she got that from. And it's beautiful to witness. And I'm so glad that someone in my genealogical pool has that, because it's beautiful to witness when you witness it. But it's definitely a unicorn status. It's very unusual. Most people, Hannah, myself, learn about doing hard things through suffering and leaning into fear or anxiety to get to some stage beyond it, which creates a very different affect or way of engaging the world. I have witnessed Hannah and Kate help each other by talking through, let's say, a problem that one of them is having in their life, and they're very close and they go to one another a great deal. Kate will very often share problems with Hannah that are a product of her being too outspoken. So Hannah has a bailiwick of experience that comes from exercising restraint and calculation. It's not unusual for Hannah to go to Kate to talk about something that is causing her fear or anxiety, and Kate will encourage Hannah by describing the merits of courage. Where strain can come in those two worldviews is in family circumstances where An approach to solving a problem has not been determined as yet. And people feel very passionate about their worldview or the belief in which they cling to solve a particular set of problems. And there are other areas where that shows up too. But in a family system, I have found it particularly valuable and this is where I mentioned earlier, I have to talk about some things I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It is better to describe a human attribute than try to imply the attribute by describing a person. You need to be more like Hannah here. You need to be more like Kate here. No. Instead, we'll talk about courage without comparison. We'll talk about restraint without comparison. We'll talk about being careful or cautious or being committed without comparison. I can't say that I've ever witnessed comparison language as a way of getting someone to try something new work well when you're using people as the image. Be more like Martin Luther King. Well, no, how about being more outspoken about what's noble and beautiful and true? Some examples of this might include people like Martin Luther King, people like, without using the person as the mode to describe the attribute. I think that can get people into trouble, parents into trouble, caregivers into trouble. I also think that when we celebrate people for any reason, among others, and I've had life statement memories come from being recognized for this thing I did or that thing that I did. And I'm very grateful to those experiences. They're helpful to me in so many ways. I think it's best when we describe the human attribute that the person embodied or demonstrated. That's the thing that we want to language and voice treat, as opposed to describing the person. And you can't escape describing the person. I'm not suggesting that you don't do it at all, but I'm suggesting that you're very clear in whatever it is that you're extolling about another human being. So let's say if I were going to talk about my wife, someone said, talk about why Lori's great. I would say things like this. My wife's tolerance and selflessness in accepting parts of me that I know are problematic for her because she was raised so differently is a quality that I cherish. I cherish her willingness to accept me and parts of me that I know, based on her experience, she does not relish. Now, Lori's great because she accepts me. Does that communicate the same thing? Lori's great because she accepts me. No. Her acceptance of parts of me that make her grind her teeth is a human quality that has almost heavenly origin. And she embodies that. Listen to how I just distinguished between those two things. So when we're talking about our kids, I want to encourage you to celebrate the differences that they have because they speak to the wonder of God's creation in the human being. Look at the wonderful diversity that exists within my own family. I want to celebrate that. I have diversity in my family in how they show up in the world. But what are the things that they share and are common? that should equally be mentioned or treated in language. Their commitment to integrity, their understanding that suffering means something, their faith in their creator, their commitment to discipline and rituals and work to achieve goals. These are things they both share while they are radically different people. And there are, let's say, more things to celebrate in your own family about the differences between people than there are things to criticize. You just have to find them and find out a way of articulating them that extols the virtue without necessarily overemphasizing the person. It's the virtue that is what other people resonate with. I want to have more patience like this person. I'd love to have more serenity like this person. I'd like to experience more courage like this person. I'm naming the attribute. I'm not just describing the person embodying it. And for what it's worth, I'll just say it. Jesus was a great teacher. Even if you're not Christian and you read the synoptic gospels and you read the parables, the quality of his ability to extol the virtue of what's desirable or to describe the qualities of what isn't desirable was a masterful gift to humanity, a way of talking about things that, like I've mentioned before, is anchored in principles above personalities. So, what about different paths? What if things are not good in your family system? What if you got a kid in college and another kid addicted to substances and their life is falling apart? What if you have a kid who's being bullied in school and another kid who's a star athlete? How do I celebrate that? How do I make sense of all of that? Well, the first order of business, wherever it's occurring, is to recognize that the harm has to stop. When we talk about substance misuse, there does seem to be a large politically driven, ideologically driven initiative to accept that somehow people can thrive with an ongoing relationship to substance misuse. No, people don't thrive addicted to things. They may make money. They may have a big house. They may have a meaningful job serving community while quietly drinking themselves to sleep. I know what that life is like. Don't think for a minute that an ongoing addiction to substance misuse results in thriving. There's no data that supports this at all. None. Zero. This doesn't mean life periodically smoking marijuana or having a relationship with drugs is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about addiction to the degree that everything else pales in comparison to the need to get high or altered. This is why we have substance abuse and recovery systems of care throughout the world. If this were a preferred way of living, we wouldn't see that, Anyway, why did I bring that up? This is a difficult thing to live with in the family, witnessing somebody doing this, especially when they're young. So, what are the things you can pull out of that human being in your view of them and your description of them that separates the attribute from the person? What are the principles you can pull out of it? Is the person in your family who is living this way, are there qualities about them over the course of your life with them that can be held up and celebrated? Are there other attributes that they want to aspire to but potentially feel unable to, or unworthy, or they're carrying shame, or they're carrying guilt. You're not going to help the situation if you constantly use the other person in your family that's doing better as the example. Be more like Jill, be more like Bobby. That's not going to help the person who's struggling to make it in the world. Instead, what are the strengths that the person who's suffering has? That's the whole basis of strengths-based approaches when it comes to serving people with serious mental illness or living with disabilities. What are the strengths that can be pulled out and leveraged in your language with them? What are the things about them that can be celebrated so they can derive some kind of meaning or value out of your remarks or appraisal about them? So this is a complex topic. There's a lot of suffering going on in families right now. There's fatherlessness. There's parents dropping kids off at emergency rooms, hoping that DCYF, the Division of Children, Youth, and Family Services, are just going to take over for them. I don't know if you're aware of the depth of those problems that are happening in your communities today, but they are significant. Our youth and family services agencies are almost becoming repositories for kids being dropped off by parents wanting to check out of parenting. There has been no greater gift in the world to me than being a parent. And there is always an opportunity to do better right now. I'll reveal this. I was estranged from one of my daughters for a long time, 16 years. And I have an opportunity to build something now, this late in life, with one of my own children. There's always an opportunity for you to improve relationship with one of your own. So with that, I hope you were able to get something out of this. Same family, different paths. On every Tuesday, we broadcast on all the platforms about issues that are relevant for just about everybody. And on Thursdays on the Jumpstart Mastery Network, we talk about topics that are more specific to professional communities of care and services. Hope you got something out of this. I wish you all the best. Take good care.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.